Hi everyone, welcome to Talking Tools. This is a podcast dedicated towards exploring all of the aspects that go into designing and constructing well. My name is Siva, and the topic of today is a document that I've been a little bit iffy about. I'm unconvinced of its effectiveness and how it's used in today's construction. Joining me today is Jerry Tyrrell. G'day, Jerry.
Hello, Siva. Hi, everyone.
Specifications. Quite a broad topic. Ingrained in our construction process, a document that's intended to provide the direction and the guidance for site staff, but I don't know if it's working.
I don't think it is, and I think we'll go through the key points why.
Let's talk about the intent of this document. All right, everyone's doing them. Specification documents getting thrown onto every major project. What's the intent? Let's go back to basics.
The intent of the specification is to give the person doing the work the information necessary to build the high-risk, complex parts of the job properly.
And look, this is a Class 1 building around the corner from here. This is a specification document. I actually did a word count on this one. 162 pages. Yep. 44,246 words.
This is only a small one.
This is a small one. This is a baby spec.
It's a baby spec. It's just a Class 1.
So here's a specification. Talked about the intention. Who's the intended audience for this document?
Well, I think it's the MIP, the most important person, the tradesman doing the job. Sometimes it's read for technical reasons by some of the consultants, but in the main, it's for the tradesperson.
Yep. Okay, intended audience. So the building contractor, the tradespeople on the front line doing the work.
And the building contractor needs to pass it down when there's technical information that the specification contains. But in fact, the specification is only really referring to documents that already exist, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah. The components. So this isn't the only component of a specification. What are the key components of a specification?
Well, in actual fact, the specification is the specification. The specification refers to the four construction project documents as amended and every one of the consultant's documents. So it essentially refers to a whole heap of reference documents. You could say that the specification is the umbrella over all of the documentation for the project that's going to be built well. Yep.
And so there's these various components that the specification pulls in. What are those components?
They are the architect's drawings, the consultant's drawings. Most importantly, there's confusion because some people think you need to write up what a technical manufacturer will require, or that you will need to take an item out of your well-prepared schedule and put it back end into the specification where it's buried and lost, or you have to take a note from your detail. I think there's a mindset where we must put everything that we are referring to in the specification, in our documents, in our schedules, in our details.
And these are the project-specific documents. These are not generic documents.
Yeah. So I'm going to just say, this is published quite often before the building commences. So it's out of date before it even gets to site. Then it lobs in to site. It's never amended and changed, and the document substituted, and nobody gets it. It may be looked at once in a while, prior to commencing a phase of construction, but the tradesmen aren't seeing it.
So probably what's floating around my mind, Jerry, is if the codes exist, and I've got a AS 3740 here, we've got the National Construction Code, we've got all of these codes that exist. If the
I'll just get it from behind the door, Siva.
All right, there we go. So the codes exist. Why are we having to it feels like a duplication, a re-specification of the codes that already exist? Why can't an architect or a designer just say, here are my site-specific details, my drawings, my consultant documents, my schedules, and just build it according to the codes? Why are they having to then regurgitate, reiterate, repeat?
I don't know. I think there's just more evolved chaos that punishes our industry, instead of the architect designer very skillfully choosing a really careful product because they've chosen wisely, or they then refer to something that's in their detail, or they put a note on their detail to make sure that the sealant is done absolutely correctly, or they just know that somewhere in their bundle of documentation is the information or the reference to a tool that shows the tradesperson how to do it.
You've just brought a couple of documents up. Let's pull that to screen. So let's talk about this is the selection tool. Yeah.
So this is almost prior to your specification. You've got to make sure that your schedules and everything that you're including in the building is in fact a good choice. And ideally, the builder also does this before he makes a substitution. He's making sure that what he suggests to you, which might be cheaper, it might be better, that he makes a substitution. He's also, before he puts it in front of you, making sure he's gone through the rigour of a selection or a product selection test or tool, we call it, which really makes sure that your choices are good.
What's the risk with? I mean, you've been passionately talking about the importance of product choice, product selection. What's the risk here of and then maybe this is an obvious question, but what's the risk of improper selection?
It is absolutely huge. I'm on a number of sites now, and I'm just seeing these choices being passed on without concern. There are engineered flooring that just shows that stains and warps and twists. There are limestones that just are hell after the first year because they will show stains. There's the wrong use of steel externally, or they don't use the right finish on stainless steel. All sorts of products that just are badly chosen.
Who's accountable for correct selection? Is it the design cohort or is it construction?
In my opinion, it's normally the designers and architects are going to be ultimately responsible. But if a builder suggests something that doesn't have the appropriate warranty, which I say must be easy to trigger, there are some issues too with that.
Right. So designers, architects are accountable for correct selection.
You will look like a fool for selecting a bad choice, but the builder will ultimately take responsibility, especially if they've done a substitution.
Yeah. And then you brought up the joint anatomy, or the joint science, which you're very passionate about.
Well, look, every specification needs to refer to products like this, not to AS 4654, the external waterproofing code, which I know really well.
That's right here.
But ideally, when a joint needs to go in, or if the FRL needs to be maintained because you're putting a peno through, there are so many rules about the installation of sealants around all those hundreds of penetrations that go in to the easiest of buildings. No specification has the DNA, the science of joints the way we need to have it, except really asbestos specification.
So, and this may be pointing to the obvious, but you're telling me that this information is not in a standard specification.
It calls up, it might say it 10 or 12 times, go to a certain standard, go to this, go to that, but it doesn't tell you exactly how, and it doesn't illustrate exactly how you need to install a high-risk component, which ideally you can see on your phone because the tradesmen have been told, if in doubt, you look at tools and make sure that it complies with tools.
So essentially this is almost, it's a map, rather confusing map. It says go here, okay, go to find the information, go here, then you've got to pour through this and find, and you may have 10,
It's unillustrated, mostly.
Unillustrated, text-based. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and we spoke before that the intended reader of a specification is a building contractor and their tradespeople.
Sure.
Yep, and generally the intention is to be read on site when they're constructing, when they're building. Yep.
Yes.
So this feels like a pretty unuseful, inaccessible document to be using on site. To be educating and advising our tradespeople.
I've never seen a tradesman look at it. Never. Not in 50 years.
In 50 years, you haven't seen a tradesperson?
I've never seen a tradesman. Sometimes the building contractor maybe, and certainly possibly somebody up in the site office, site engineer may have a look at it. But no, I've never seen the actual person doing a high-risk item like a seal check a specification.
Why? Why are they not looking? I mean, this document exists. Why are they not looking at it?
I don't know. I think it's because there's confusion, that it duplicates quite often information that the trades need to get a different way.
Yeah.
So the information's there. So most of the information, well, all the information that's inside the word specification already exists. It's been published by the consultants. It's been published by you guys, the designers and architects. There may be a technical requirement using a specific trade product from Lysarts or from a tile supplier. But all of that information is in the public domain as a reference document.
Yep, yep. It feels to me, and I've actually written here, it really feels like this is a document fit for lawyers and for solicitors, and not for the intended audience, which are contractors. What do you say to that?
It doesn't work. When I'm trying to defend you or a builder against a specification, I just pick holes in it because it's not complete, or the reference to a standard is not up to date, or the information about the specific fault in the building work is not clearly communicated in some cross-reference that doesn't say anything. And all I do is I just hold up the defective work, photographs and evidence of the defective work, and say, where in the specification did it set out exactly how to avoid that particular defect?
And you've said to me before that typically specifications are read for the first time in a building dispute.
Yeah. And I don't want building disputes. I don't want the problems to occur. What I want to do is have the information that the specification says it's meant to contain in front of humble me. When I'm doing a fire stop detail, I make sure it's the correct depth, and the gap between the penetration and the service pipe is compliant.
Yep. So in summary, specifications are a well-intentioned document.
Yeah.
They've degenerated into a box-ticking, backside covering,
Burial.
a burial of information. We're saying that let's arm our tradespeople, our contractors, with the knowledge they need to build your project well.
A specification, but a specification not repeating and duplicating, only really referring to the fact that your reference documents need to be complete about the high-risk items, and that you've got a trail where you can 24/7 find the very specific information at anything complex at the coalface where you're doing the work.
And that's where success or failure occurs, right? At the coalface. Yeah, not back in offices, not in front of boardrooms. It's at the coalface. And this is where a well-documented, diagrammed, illustrated specification with the essential knowledge can really make the difference.
Under the umbrella of the word specification are all the very, very specific, high-risk, illustrated tools that tell you how to do it.
Yeah. I've quoted you before, and I just want a quick explanation for each of them. You've quoted as saying architects and designers hate creating them.
Yeah, I mean, it must be one of the most boring jobs out there. That obviously experience comes in. Often the specifier just grabs a whole lot of previous mistakes and tries to weave it in.
Template.
Often choices are made outside his remit.
Yep.
So he prepares the specification, and then a schedule is then prepared, which has got different items in there which he hasn't been able to consider. Look, it's not a fun job.
Not fun. And when you look at the designers and architects, these are creative people. They think in 3D, they think in space. They don't think in 44,000 words, right? So it seems like just off the bat, it's an incorrect fit. Clients don't want to pay for them. Why?
Well, because they have to pay for them, but the trouble is sometimes they're hurriedly done and they still cost money, or they're very carefully done, but there's some omission and they're not up to date, and they cost a lot of money.
Yep.
And in all fairness, it's for documents that already exist.
That's the thing, right? It's a duplication. So clients are thinking, why am I paying for this again?
Yeah.
This stuff already exists. It exists in the codes, and we're just regurgitating it.
I'd prefer the client and the designer architect to share that profit of basically communicating what's already existed a little bit better in the schedules and the details, and having a very successful building job because the tradesman can find it.
What about our certified friends? I mean, often they accept specifications without review. They might do a cursory glance.
They're not paid to read that. Sorry. And if they did read it, they're not. I mean, if you're very young, sorry, you're not experienced enough to know whether that is a compliant part. Some of the details I see that go through the portal and through to the certifiers, they are absolute nonsense. And the certifiers are just ticking a box and saying that that's fine. They have been submitted to the portal and in New South Wales, and they're meant to be correct.
When you say absolute nonsense, what do you mean? Have you got an example that comes to mind?
Flashings that don't extend to the right point. use of incompatible materials, just absurdly inexperienced rookie mistakes that are not covered by the specification because it refers to something that's wrong, rather than having something referred to a tool or a process or an illustration that in the end will always be seen as the right way to build.
You said building contractors don't read them. You mentioned that before.
As I said, what the builder wants at a high risk area of the work, he wants ideally skill himself. He wants his people to be skilled. If he's not there, he wants to be able to pass knowledge about the skill needed, the craft needed to do that high risk work well. And is it in here? No. He might have a fantastic drawing that sets out the height, the width, the size, what components and what materials are going together. That's great. He passes that on. But the way they're put together, it's never in there. The nuts and bolts, the North Star of the information is not in there. They need this granular knowledge about the height of a water stop angle, the depth of a sealant, and the willingness to go and do the work necessary to find out the knowledge that complements the instructions from the designer under the umbrella of specification.
Yeah. I mean, what that building contractor really wants is if this was an effective document, a document that could be used on site, that building contractor could lean on this and say, you know what, my tradespeople can rely upon this document to construct the project well. I mean, it's going to give that building contractor a lot of ease and peace of mind.
Look, sitting here, my brain just flashed to a thought bubble. Eventually, you'll just pick up your phone and you'll put it onto that exact detail, and it's going to pull up the high-risk items, and it's going to tell you, just be careful, turn up your flashings, box your ends, drain it out. I was on site this morning, and they were going to finish this exposed ag walkway paving above the base of the subsill. And I had to stand over the concreter and said, no, we're not going to be doing that. Now that should be just a standard practice. None of that is in specifications.
And you were fortunate enough that you were there. Now, wouldn't it be better if that concreter had that essential knowledge?
Exactly, but all they need to do is pretty much just go to tools, look at the threshold. It's down, it's lower, it's always lower than internal floor level. You've just got all those basic rules there that it's just impossible to put on your details in all cases.
So let's talk about Spec Tools. So Spec Tools is a new system that we've crafted upon tools, and it uses the tools graphics to effectively communicate the performance standards, the compliance required upon a project, and allows a designer and architect to pull all of that into a specification, weave in spec rules, which is a one-page succinct a document that captures all of the performance for the works. And it can be created in a fraction of the time and a fraction of the cost compared to this document. Jerry, why do you think, you said I thought this was going to be a really important system, but now that it's out there, you're realizing its impact could be much greater.
I thought it was only going to be applying to about 50% of jobs. Now I know it could apply to all jobs. It enables all of you out there. It means that your drawings, your details, your schedules, and the way you bundle the consultant's docos together, which you're doing anyway, become the important part of it. And we might say that Spec Tools is new. I don't know. I think what it's doing, it's just pulling all that documentation together better, and it's enabling you to spend more time on the schedules and the details and be available to your tradesmen when they need you on site with anything that's a little bit quirky.
Which ultimately is the stuff that really matters, right? Those site-specific things, the schedules, the details, the consultant docos.
Sure. And muddling through. If you don't take on board the fact that an architect, a designer on site at the right time when there's a lot of congestion between different services and material, your BIM model will raise some of this, but there will inevitably be things where you just need to go on site and sort it out yourself. Please don't be like many of the bunnies that I've seen. They try to prepare a detail that took them a lot of time, and it's just wrong. It's silly. It hasn't anticipated. Much better to have broadly put the dimensions and solved that on site.
Yeah. In speaking with designers, architects, one of the comments that they've told me is that I feel safe with this document. It protects me. It's a shield against liability. What do you say to that? Because Spec Rules is it's a rather succinct document.
Can I scream on camera?
Yes.
It's just mind-numbingly dumb to be hiding behind something that nobody uses, nobody can find, when what we really need to do is reprioritise exactly how our tradesmen, our consultants, other sub-consultants are getting the information that they need to make informed decisions from, and ideally to build well with.
Which is the intent of a specification. So talk to me about Spec Rules. It's quite an innovation. It's a one-pager that captures all of the requirements, the legal requirements for the works.
I'm not sure whether it is an innovation, because all the specs I read, all the standard specs, all the box and word processor specs essentially say thou shalt comply, but they say it 100 times. So all we're saying is that thou shalt comply with about 10 different variables that trap everything. And I'm going to use the term capture. If you want me to protect you in a building dispute, never ever say something specific. Say it in a performance. We know about performance solutions. Take a performance approach to how you document a specification, that thou shalt comply with everything, and that's where Spec Rules comes in. And you can edit it. So if you want to capture the fact that you're building on the waterfront and you need to comply with the maritime authority in that area, I would just be possibly doubling up and saying, and maritime authority.
So is Spec Rules, if it is generic in nature, can it be used in a mediation, in a legal dispute?
Oh, sure. It's the biggest catching gloves that I've seen in the industry, because with evidence you will essentially find an area in Spec Rules that you can then sadly punish the person who's made the mistake with.
Yeah. It's a bit of a mind boggle to say that one page can replace, along with the tools, graphics, can replace this document. It feels it's counterintuitive.
Sorry, look, I go in there and I'll have had an expert read that. I'll have had the solicitor read it. I'll then have a barrister read it. They might have then got a QC read it. It's generated 5 times more paper. Me and my cohorts, we have to read it for something that, did you comply with the requirements of every single Australian standard that was relevant at the time of work? And all I do is I just pull it out and say, well, that's what they should have done, and who cares?
Yeah, I love the simplicity.
It's very simple.
It's simple. So you're saying, and just to finalise...
But I don't want to apply it. I don't want to use specs. What I want to do is try to make sure that the information, the specifications originally were trying to get to us on site is in fact getting to the person who was going to unintentionally make the mistake that finds us all in front of a tribunal or magistrate. So
the key components of Spec Tools are all of the tools, graphics, and people have the option to drop spec blocks onto their drawings. So the reader can instantly get access to the specified compliance. What are the other key components? You've got the consultant documents, schedules.
You can litter your drawings with spec blocks and specific information if you want to, but if you can refer just to tools, which is about 600 screens of very technical information about best practice. Spec Rules captures all the key issues that we spoke about, and then ideally the reference documents of what a specification is anyway, subject to the technical craft that I think tools contains.
Yeah, and it is just a specification, but it's a better specification.
It's just you just build better, you've got less risk, and ideally we're not thinking, oh, we're covering our arse. We're building well. We're giving people the knowledge that they really need. So you came up with the term North Star. Really the heart of any good building process is in fact knowledge. Tools is the North Star to that knowledge. And that includes you on site in the way you've amended a drawing and you've used your skill fantastically to create a beautiful buildable product, which somebody has to do for you. They're not enabled. They're not enabled using this sort of nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely. This document has degenerated into a legal document that only serves to create a greater divide between design and construction, only often read in building disputes. Let's change that. We have the power, and you now have the tools. You have SPES tools, a system that can actually help building contractors and tradespeople build well.
Sure. Good luck. Build well.